I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but here we are. My name's David, and I've been married to Emily for about 5 years now. We seemed okay, not perfect, but good enough. We had our routines, shared a house, a dog, a decent life. She's beautiful, kind of icy, honestly, and she's always had a bit of a bitchy streak, but I figured that was just her personality. She's been like that since the beginning, sharp-tongued and quick to cut down anyone she thought was beneath her. Still, she's smart, funny when she wants to be, and for the most part I thought she cared about me. Things started to feel off a few months ago, little things. Emily started working late more often, claiming she had extra shifts at the office. She'd dodge questions about where she'd been, and her phone stayed glued to her side. I'd catch her texting late at night, hiding her screen when I'd come into the room. It didn't totally click at first, but I knew her. She's not the kind to just cheat on a whim, but she's also no stranger to lying when it suited her. Then there were the little signs, like her tone changing when I talked about our future, or her spending more time in the garage than usual, which I'd initially chalked up to her helping with some home projects. But I'd noticed her getting shifty whenever I asked about her meetings or her phone. The worst part was how she'd get defensive, snapping, dismissing my concerns, calling me paranoid or insecure. I kept telling myself I was overthinking, but deep down, I felt the unease growing. One thing that really stuck out was how she'd suddenly become obsessed with the kitchen renovation I'd hired a handyman for. His name was Mike, and I'd brought him in after I hurt my back and couldn't do the work myself. Emily acted like she was super involved, asking questions about the tiles, the cabinets, the lighting. But it was more than that. She'd find excuses to be around him, hang back when he was working, and I noticed her texting more than usual. Whenever I'd catch her staring at her phone, her face would get this sneer, like she was hiding some secret. I thought maybe she was just bored with the project, but now I see she was probably sneaking around with him. I remember one night I was at the hospital for an emergency surgery. She was supposed to stay home, but I had this gut feeling I couldn't shake. I checked her phone on a whim, something I rarely do. I scrolled through her messages and bam, there it was. Flirty texts, a lot of "can't wait to see you," "miss you," and even some explicit shit about what they did in the house during the days I was gone. I saw pictures of her in my bed, her leg over his, smiling like they weren't doing something disgusting behind my back. My stomach just dropped. I felt sick, furious all at once. I couldn't believe she'd be so brazen, so blatantly cheating on me in our own house. And with the guy I'd brought in to help us fix up our place, no less. It wasn't some anonymous hookup. It was her goddamn handyman, Mike. It made my blood boil thinking about what was happening behind my back, especially knowing I was lying there, vulnerable in the hospital, and she was probably meeting him in our home, betraying everything we had. I didn't sleep that night. Just sat there staring at the phone, feeling betrayed, humiliated, and completely lost. The next morning, everything felt like a bad dream I couldn't wake up from. I was still reeling from what I saw the night before, and my mind kept circling back to the images, her in my bed, sharing secrets with Mike, every text a dagger. I knew I couldn't just ignore it or pretend it wasn't happening. I had to confront her, even if I didn't know what to say. When Emily got home that afternoon, I was sitting on the couch, trying to keep my face neutral. She looked at me with that typical sneer, that dismissive expression she always wore when she thought she was in control. I could see the defensive edge in her eyes. She was the kind of woman who'd lie through her teeth if it meant saving her own ass. "So, I guess you've seen the texts," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. My hands were trembling a little, but I forced myself to sound calm. I didn't want her to see how much she'd broken me already. She rolled her eyes and scoffed. "Oh, please, David, you're overreacting. It's just some stupid flirtation. It doesn't mean anything. You're assuming stuff again like you always do." I wasn't buying it. I stared her down, feeling the anger bubble up inside me. "It's not just some flirtation, Emily. You're cheating on me in our house, with Mike. Don't even try to lie your way out of this. I saw the messages. I know what you're doing." Her face twisted into that typical bitchy glare. "Oh, so now I'm a cheat. Do you want a medal for being a good husband? Maybe I should thank you for all the nights I spent alone because you were working or in the hospital or whatever. You think I haven't had enough? I've got needs, too. And maybe I just wanted to have some fun, something you clearly don't give me anymore." That hit like a punch to the stomach. I couldn't believe how cold she was, how she was trying to justify her betrayal with some twisted logic that I wasn't meeting her needs. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut, and my vision blurred with rage and hurt. I wanted to scream, but I managed to stay silent. Instead, I told her to leave the house, that I needed some space to think. She scoffed again, tossing her hair. "Fine, whatever, I don't need your stupid rules. I'll be out, but don't think this is over. You'll regret this, David, you always do." She stormed out, leaving me sitting there feeling numb. It was like I'd been hit by a freight train. My mind raced with every possible thing I could do, every way I wanted to punish her. I was furious that she thought she could just brush this off, that she was somehow the victim here. I kept replaying her words, her tone, the way she looked at me like I was nothing. Everything was a mess: my trust, my dignity, my sense of reality. That evening I couldn't sleep. I kept staring at her empty side of the bed, wondering how I'd let this happen, how I'd trusted her all these years. It felt like I'd been punched repeatedly, each punch more painful than the last. I kept asking myself what I did wrong, what I could have done differently. But deep down, I knew this wasn't my fault. She chose to cheat. Only thing I could do now was figure out what to do next. The betrayal was raw, fresh, and I was angry, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. This was a line she crossed, and I wasn't going to just let it slide. The days that followed were a blur of anger, confusion, and a strange numbness. I couldn't focus on anything. My mind kept circling back to her betrayal, to that damn text thread, to the way she looked when she lied about everything. I knew I had to come up with a plan, but honestly, I wasn't even sure what I wanted anymore. Part of me wanted to tear her apart, confront her with everything I knew, and make her regret ever crossing that line. The other part just wanted to disappear, forget this ever happened, crawl into a hole and let the world pass me by. I started noticing more signs, small things that I'd ignored before. The way she'd suddenly become more dismissive, more bitchy, snapping at me over nothing. The way she'd avoid being alone with me, always finding some excuse to be busy or out of the house. I caught her scrolling her phone obsessively, deleting messages, even hiding her screen when I came near. She was clearly trying to cover her tracks, but I was onto her. I knew she was hiding something, and that made me furious. One morning, I decided I wasn't going to sit around and wait for her next move. I knew I had to get ahead of her, turn the tables. I started gathering evidence, screenshots of her texts, tracking her phone location, and even sneaking into her email account when she left her laptop unlocked. I felt like I was in some kind of detective movie, but honestly, I didn't care. I just needed proof, proof that I could confront her with, proof that would make her understand I wasn't some naive fool who'd let her get away with this. I also reached out to Mike, the handyman. I wasn't planning to confront him yet, but I wanted to know what he thought about this mess. I sent him a message, pretending I was just trying to clarify some work stuff. His reply was surprisingly nonchalant, like he didn't see her as a big deal, just some woman who liked to cheat. That made me hate him even more. I knew I couldn't trust her anymore, but I also knew I had to be smart about this. Revenge had to be calculated. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me or make me look like some cuckold. Everything was falling into place, and I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and dread. I knew that whatever I did next would change everything. I'd been betrayed in the worst way possible, but I was determined not to let her get away with it. I wanted her to feel what I was feeling: humiliated, betrayed, hurt. I knew I had to be careful, though. Emily was manipulative, and I had to make sure I had all my ducks in a row before I made my move. That evening, I sat down with all the evidence I'd collected. I looked at her messages and pictures, feeling my blood boil. I couldn't believe I'd married a woman who'd cheat on me in our own house with someone I'd hired to help us. It was like a bad joke, only it was real and I was the punchline. I realized then that I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I had to do something. Not just for myself, but for my dignity. I wasn't going to be that guy who got played and did nothing. No, I was going to make her regret it in a way that she'd never forget. I wasn't sure what that looked like yet, but I knew it was coming. The next step was planning, patience, and making sure she paid for what she'd done. That's what kept me awake that night, thinking about how to turn this around, how to get revenge that would hit her where it hurt most. I didn't want her to walk away feeling like she'd won. I wanted her to know she'd been caught, humiliated, and that I was no longer going to be the naive husband she thought she could manipulate. Over the next few days, I kept everything to myself, but I was constantly planning my next move. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had to do something big, something that would make her regret every lie, every sneer, every betrayal. I started meticulously organizing everything I had, the screenshots, the GPS logs, the emails. I wanted all the evidence in one place so I could confront her with undeniable proof. I knew Emily. She was used to lying her way out of things, but I wasn't going to let her weave her way out of this one. This time, I was going to show her I wasn't some fool to be manipulated. One afternoon, I decided to bait her into slipping up. I called her and pretended to be calm, almost bored. I told her I'd been thinking about what she said, the needs she claimed I wasn't fulfilling. I played the part of the clueless husband, asking if she wanted to talk about her feelings or if she wanted to come home and fix things. She was snappy, defensive, but I could hear her trying to keep her composure. I knew she was nervous, and that was good. I told her I was coming home early that evening and I wanted her to be there when I did. Her voice was laced with that typical bitchy attitude. Fine, whatever. I'll be around. Don't expect me to beg for forgiveness, though. I could tell she was trying to act tough, but I knew better. I knew she was unraveling a little. That night I parked outside the house, watching. I wanted to see her reaction when I walked in. As soon as I stepped inside, I could smell her perfume, something floral, fake. I'd caught her sneaking her phone into her purse the moment I arrived, and I saw her hurriedly hide it when I came through the door. Her face was a little pale, her eyes darting around, trying to come up with some excuse. I didn't give her the chance. I laid everything out on the table, screenshots of her texts, photos, GPS logs, everything. I told her I knew she'd been cheating with Mike and that I wasn't going to let her lie her way out of it this time. Her eyes widened and she scoffed. God, you're crazy. You're just jealous. You're imagining things. Her voice was shrill, defiant. That only made me angrier. I got in her face and I told her exactly what I knew about her meetings with Mike, how she'd been sneaking around, lying, betraying everything we built together. I pointed out her texts, her lies, the times she'd been in the house when she thought I was asleep or not paying attention. Her face turned red, and she tried to deny everything, but I didn't buy her bullshit anymore. I was done playing her game, and then she snapped. You're such a jealous asshole, she spat. Maybe if you spent less time working and more time paying attention, I wouldn't have to find someone who actually cares about me. Honestly, I don't even want to stay married to someone who's so paranoid all the time. She looked at me with that venomous glare like she thought she had the upper hand, but I knew better. This was her way of deflecting, of pretending it wasn't her fault. I just looked at her, feeling the rage simmering beneath the surface. I told her she could pack her bags and leave if she wanted, that I wasn't going to let her keep lying to my face. I told her I'd had enough of her bullshit, and I was going to make her regret crossing that line. I wasn't going to let her destroy us without consequence. That night I decided I'd give her one last chance to come clean, or I'd do what I'd planned all along, expose her to everyone. I wanted her to see that she wasn't just hurting me, she was destroying herself. 2. I knew I was angry, hurt, betrayed, but I also felt a strange sense of control. I'd finally taken the reins and I had her cornered. The game was over, and now I was just waiting for her to realize it. I wanted her to understand that I wasn't going to be some fool anymore. I was done being the one she lied to. The aftermath of that confrontation was a whirlwind. Emily stormed out of the house, her face twisted in rage, her voice screaming that I was crazy, paranoid, and that she'd never stay with a man who thought so little of her. I stood there, watching her slam the door behind her, feeling a strange mix of victory and emptiness. Part of me wanted to feel satisfied that I had finally caught her, that I'd put an end to her lies. But honestly, I just felt exhausted, drained by all the lies, the betrayal, the years I wasted trusting someone who clearly didn't care about me. That night, I stayed up, scrolling through all the evidence again, trying to make sense of it all. I kept asking myself what I'd do next, whether I should confront her again, or just cut her out completely. I knew I couldn't keep pretending I didn't know what she'd done. The truth was staring me right in the face, and I had to decide what kind of man I wanted to be. Did I want to fight for this marriage, or was it already beyond saving? The next morning, I decided I was done. I'd had enough of her lies, her manipulations, and her outright disrespect. I called a lawyer, scheduled a meeting, and started drafting the papers for separation. I wanted her to feel the weight of her actions. She'd betrayed me, lied to my face, and ruined what we had. I wasn't going to be some fool who let her walk all over me anymore. I wanted her to see that her choices had consequences, that I wasn't going to be a pushover. But even as I prepared for the inevitable, I had to admit I still cared. Deep down, I still loved her, or at least the version of her I thought I knew. That made everything harder. I kept questioning whether I was making the right decision, whether she'd change, whether I was just throwing away something worth saving. But I knew better. I knew I was done pretending that her lies were just mistakes or that I was overreacting. I started cleaning out her side of the closet, packing her things in boxes. Every shirt, every pair of shoes, every little thing she owned felt like a symbol of everything I'd lost. It was like I was physically removing the betrayal from my life, piece by piece. I told myself I'd survive this. Hell, I'd come out stronger. But it still hurt. Deep down, I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. It's one thing to suspect your wife might be cheating, but it's another entirely to have it confirmed in such a brutal way. While I was doing all that, I kept thinking about Mike, what he did, what she did with him, and how easy it seemed for her to throw away everything we'd built. I wondered if she even cared about the damage she caused, or if she just saw everything as a game. That thought made me sick, but I also felt a strange sense of relief. I was finally taking control, taking back my life from the woman who'd betrayed me, who'd lied and lied and lied some more. That evening I sat alone in what used to be our living room, surrounded by her clothes and her excuses. I looked around and realized I'd be okay. Maybe not right away, maybe not without some pain, but I'd get through it. I'd learned a hard lesson about trust, about who people really are, and about not letting anyone take advantage of you. If there's one thing this mess taught me, it's that sometimes you have to rip the Band-Aid off, no matter how much it hurts. Because staying silent and pretending everything's fine only makes everything worse in the end. So now I'm here, reflecting on what happened and figuring out how to move forward. I don't know if I'll ever fully get over it, but I do know I won't let her or anyone else treat me like I don't matter. I'll rebuild, stronger and smarter. And maybe someday, I'll look back at this and realize it was the wake-up call I needed. That's the only way I can see this ending, by taking control and refusing to let betrayal define me anymore. Now, after everything, I sit here in my empty house, feeling like I've been through hell and somehow survived. I can't say I'm completely healed, far from it, but I've learned a lot about trust, about betrayal, and about myself. Emily's gone, moved out, probably already with someone new or doing whatever she thinks will make her happy. Honestly, I don't care anymore. What she did to me was brutal, but it also opened my eyes. I realize now that I never really knew her, not the real her, and maybe I was fooling myself all along. The hardest part was the shock, how someone I loved, trusted, and built a life with could so easily throw it all away. I used to think that love meant loyalty, that if you commit to someone, you stay faithful no matter what. But I guess that's not always true. Some people just aren't wired that way. Emily proved me wrong. She chose her selfishness over us, over everything we had. And I can't change that. All I can do now is pick up the pieces and move on. I've started seeing a therapist. Not because I want to forget her, but because I need to understand how I let this happen, how I let someone so toxic into my life. I've realized that my mistake was trusting too much, ignoring the signs, and not standing up for myself sooner. But that's on me. Learning to set boundaries, to recognize red flags, and to value myself, that's what I need to do moving forward. Looking back, I also see that revenge was a double-edged sword. In the beginning, it felt good, like I finally had some power after being betrayed so completely. But the truth is, it didn't bring me peace. It just left me tired and hollow. So now I'm choosing forgiveness. Not for her, maybe, but for myself. Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting or excusing what she did. It means letting go of the anger that's eating me up. I want to move past this, to rebuild my sense of worth, and to find happiness again. This whole experience has been a brutal wake-up call. I've learned that sometimes the only way to save yourself is to walk away from something toxic, even if it hurts like hell. That trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild, and not everyone deserves your loyalty. I've learned that standing up for yourself, even if it's hard, is the only way to regain control. And, most importantly, I've realized that I'm stronger than I thought. I just needed to go through this fire to see it. So here I am, a bit battered, a lot wiser, and finally ready to start over. I don't know what the future holds, but I know I won't let betrayal or lies define me anymore. I'll find someone who values me, who respects me, and who wouldn't dream of betraying everything we built. And I'll never forget what I learned. Trust is precious, but it's also fragile. When it's broken, the only way forward is to pick up the pieces and rebuild, stronger than before.